Hello everyone. I hope you don't mind. This presentation will be in English. I need to prepare myself for some conferences this year, so I hope you don't mind. Today we will talk about enhancing your development workflow with StoryBook, with React StoryBook. But before we start with that, a little bit about myself. My name is Vladimir Novick. I'm a web architect and consultant at the CodeValue company. I'm working with them, I work with other clients, I work on my own projects, basically in the fields of web, mobile, VR, AR, MR, and IoT. The cool things. Mostly everything is in JavaScript ecosystem, mostly in the React field. After the lecture, if you have some questions, maybe you have a project you want me to participate in, to give a consultancy, you can just ping me on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. Okay, so let's begin. Before that, I have some assumptions about your knowledge, that you are familiar with React a little bit. Who's not familiar with React here? It's okay, you will hopefully understand.
I come from the dark side of Angular.
Okay, we won't start Angular versus React wars here. You're familiar with modern JavaScript. You like cool tools. You want to be productive. And something else I forgot to put here. Whatever. How we... Oops. Couldn't you remind before that? Before I started? Okay. So how we create...
It's the comic relief.
Yeah. How we create user interfaces in React. Well, we have lots of reusable components, right? We reuse everything. Our components are functions of state and props, which is good. And we have all these functional programming paradigms, and we're trying to do Redux stuff and Mobix and or RX, whatever you like. Have amazing tooling. We have React debugger. We have console login for our actions. We have dev tools that support. You know React DevTools, right? It shows you all the components inside your components hierarchy, and you have this time travel thing, which Dan Abramov introduced in React Europe some 2015,
I think, yeah.
Something like that. And this is Mobix one, which is also awesome. And obviously we have Redux and Mobix to manage our state. But we have a lot of problems with all that rich ecosystem, with all that amazing tooling. Yeah, not that kind of problems. It reminds me that my nose actually itches. We have lots of props in components, lots of them. We have lots of edge cases. Like I have buttons with emojis, buttons with text, button with dragons, button with whatever. Our components are harder to test. We have lots of them, we have lots of APIs connected to our components. It's harder to mock, right? Harder to style. Have visual bugs, and designers don't really like visual bugs. And it's really hard for new developers to get in, especially if you have a huge application with lots of components. New developers just don't know what components are where, and they just can recreate components that may be already there. And designer and product are not aware of existing components. So if, for example, a designer wants to create a social button, and he forgot that this social button was created like a year ago, and he recreates it, and developer recreates it, and nobody's happy, product especially are not happy because you know why. And the problem of all of us, no documentation. Who writes documentation, honestly?
My code, the document itself.
Props to you. Well, we don't really have lots of documentation. That's our problem. So let's look how our workflow looks like. We open an editor, we open a browser, we navigate to the right page, we open developer tools, we inspect the DOM, we make CSS adjustments in DevTools, we memorize values in head or copy paste, we go back to editor, we'll locate the right CSS file, we save, we refresh page, repeat. Right? Sounds familiar? No. We have designer that creates a mockup, he sends a bunch of images, developers try to make it work like a Photoshop, nobody really happy, and it comes back. Okay, so the real stuff now. TDD, you're familiar with TDD, right? Test-driven development. It's the best way, personally I think, to create your components. With one small exception, you do an application design first, and then you create TDD. But there is a new one. There is CDD, which is component-driven development. This is a new one. It started. It lets you to focus on your development, increase UI coverage, receive early feedback, build components libraries, and parallelize your development. And this is basically when you create your screen, not screen down to component, but component up to the screen. Like creating huge libraries of components and then reuse them across your application. You also test them visually in separation. You can parallelize your development between several teams or in one team. Several people working on separated components, and they are working on them API first. So they may be not connecting them to Redux or MobX or whatever. They're just doing the components with visual styling, and that's it. And you have a huge component library that you also can open source, which is what Walmart Labs or Airbnb, HubSpot are doing. They have huge amount of packages, or open source packages, and this is because they are working that way. They create their components, they create their packages they need, and then they just open source to the world. So from the CDD, there is a derivative, it's called Visual TDD. Basically, it's the same technique to write your components from components ground up to the screen, but to test them visually. And this is done using component explorers. Component explorers are tools that live outside of your application. They are configured elsewhere. They're not dependent on any webpack or whatever configs you have in an application, and they're just an isolated environment that gives you an ability to import your components inside, inspect them visually, test them, do whatever you like with these components, and when the component is done, you can send the whole component explorer link, you can send it to your designer or product, and they can check whether design matches, whether functionality is fine. Sorry, is fine, and then everybody's happy. So it's time to get back to StoryBook. So what is StoryBook? React StoryBook. Well, it's a component explorer. It's an isolated environment that lives outside of your app. And inside this environment, you can create interactive user stories. It can be extended with various plugins system. You can enable documentation inside. You can enable tests inside StoryBook. You can make StoryBook generate tests for you, and it's just a great tool for web developer, web designer. It's a mistake here. It's not only web. It also works for React Native, which is amazing by itself, I think. But it gives you the same ability you have in web, in StoryBook and web. You just start your React Native app and you can play around with your components. And yeah, it's fun. So why it's called StoryBook? What's a story? A story is a visual state of your UI component. Like I gave an example of a button, right? So it's a button with text. It's a state, visual state component. Button with dragons or with images is different state of your component. Here, when I say state, I don't refer to React state. I mean the visual one. Like you see button with text or button with, it's visually different, right? So let's check one of existing storybooks from Airbnb. It's called React Dates. And basically it's a date picker with various options. Like you have a default date picker, you have hidden with display none, have it as part of a forum, have it in whatever language is it, I don't know, Chinese maybe. It can be with Arabic, with input props. You got the idea, I hope. Have a lot of variations of the same component with different props, different behavior, different visual state, right? So you have a lot of this stuff. Also, you can, I think, if I remember, show that. No, I don't remember. So whatever, you can like filter here. There's something that is called input props. You have this one. Also, you have always keep forgetting short. I think it's no. Yeah. You have search like Sublime, like Atom, VS Code search, everything. I don't know how this search is called. Somebody knows?
Spotlight.
Kind of, yeah, but there's a name for this search.
Plastic?
No, doesn't matter. Okay, so that was the example of existing ones. So how you create your storybook? It's as simple as getting.
JS Israel, huh?
Huh?
JS Israel.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's different. It's a more in-depth version of JS Israel presentation for people that are more involved in React, okay? Which is good.
We'll talk later.
And I have different repo for React JS Israel for it. But anyway, how you install your storybook? Install it globally. npm i-g get storybook. Then you generate storybook. As I said before, it's generated outside of your application, so it doesn't change any of your config. And then you just run it. npm run storybook. That's it. That's basically the whole setup. So what do we get?
When you generate the storybook, is it specific to your application or?
No, the question was if storybook is generated, if it's specific for application. No, in order to create your stories, you need to physically create them. I will show it in a bit, how you do it in code. It generates isolated environment with 2 or 3 test stories just to show you how it feels, how it looks like. And it's an isolated environment that runs on port 909. It's built by Create React App, so you have all the goodies of Create React App there. It means Babel, ES216 plus, so you have a sync await and all this stuff. Babel, Webpack, CSS images, static files, JSON loader, and you can extend it with more configuration. We won't go in this depth in this lecture, but it can be done. What you get basically a folder .storybook with config.js inside. and then you have a folder generated for you inside source stories with button, index, and welcome. While config, it's easier configuration. Stories, all your stories go there, and index is stories endpoint. Button and welcome is just dummy components generated by StoryBook for you, just to show you how it looks like. How it looks like to write a story. You import stories of action link to, or just stories of from React StoryBook, and then you it looks familiar to testing, like you have described and it. Here you have stories of and add. Stories of is basically is showing this like you have button here, and then when you say add, it's like in specs. You have with text. This is the state of your component, and then you have, for example, on click. That's basically how you create stories. With action, you can log any action you want inside StoryBook's console. For example, it's really useful for Redux actions, for example. Like you have, for example, a component that receives as props, receives to-dos and actions, right? So you can just pass it this action, clicked, and you will see in StoryBook console, you see clicked, and then you will see the payload of this action. In the Redux world, you will see all the payload of the actual Redux action. And it works for any callback you pass inside props. So this is, and the link to is linking between stories. I will show you in a bit how you link between stories. Basically, it lets you to create some kind of experience like in a Vision app. Like you have several stories, several screens, and then you want to link from one screen to another screen. You just write, okay, we don't have it here. I will show you in the code how it's done, but basically you can create links between stories. And this is done when you want to make like end-to-end visual testing, sort of thing. So this is for stories. Action logger looks like this, like you have clicked, we saw it before, and you have, this is on click, so you have just synthetic event here, and if you're open, you will have all the data. Linking, I have it here. You have you just write link to button, and it will be linked to this story and the first one, the default one. If you pass a second parameter here, you will get like you say button, comma, with text, you will get a specific story of this of button component. Configuration is done inside config, as I mentioned before, and you have this setup is already created for you when you generate StoryBook. So basically, your basic involvement inside config.js is maybe for any specific add-ons, or maybe you want import global CSS from other package that will apply to all the ecosystems. It can be done here. So you require stores here, configure add-ons, and import global CSS styles. Which add-ons we have? We have live documentation, we have just snapshot testing, specs panel, notes panel, dynamic props panel. It's called knobs add-on. There are several more, but especially for me, this one and this one are super useful. Like having live documentation when you create your component, it's really nice. Also, when you run test, I will show you in a bit how it's done. But if you run test without creating one, and you have just snapshots for just created stories, it's really amazing thing. So let's do some demo coding. How much time I left?
25 minutes.
Nice. Okay, so let's open project, and I have here. So I have time to go. We have this kind of it's just the basic to do MVC app, which is probably familiar, right? It's regular to do MVC, like you have adding to-dos, completing to-dos, and you have all this filter stuff, and you can clear, and you can done lots of things. So let's create StoryBook for it. Let's assume that I already created StoryBook. I have config.js file here. Inside config, I have to do MVC app CSS, which is globally for all my components. And then I have the pre-built one, load stories and configure load stories. Okay. I also have add-ons JS, which will look a bit later. So the first thing I want to do. This is basically the first thing I always do when I write StoryBook. Yeah.
יש לך component, you have two folders with the same components, stories and components?
No, I have stories. I have all my application, which is action, components, constant, container, reducer. It's not mine. It's just out there to do MVC app. And I decided to write a storybook for it. So I ran get storybook. I got storybook.storybook, which is configuration folder. And I have stories. Inside my stories, I have index.js, which basically imports all these files, which are almost empty. Okay, I don't have anything here. So what I said inside config, I import all my CSS. I hope it answers your question, right?
Maybe I don't think.
Okay. So I have the global CSS here, and then I want to write a header component. But before that, the first thing I want to do, I don't know how header component is created, right? I can look inside header component, but let's do something else. I have set add-on function, and I have add-on already installed for live documentation. And here, it's info add-on. Yeah, I have snippets. It's cheating, I know. And I have info add-on, and hopefully it will work. Yeah. Let's also run StoryBook. Yeah, and it's running. So have an info add-on. Info add-on gives us ability with in all our stories, instead of writing add, stories of, and then add, we can write stories of, add with info. So let's do this for header. Header, I have React, stories of, and action, and I import header from components header. So let's write stories of, header, and have module, which is basically reserved word, add with info, and basic, and function, and have and we have header. As simple as that. If I click here, I look at the source, and I see that header component have props at to do. With other prop type, it means prop type was not specified, but it's required. So let's put it.
Does it understand TypeScript?
Haven't tried, to be honest, but probably you can change a bit configuration of StoryBook. It's supposed to. So inside add to do, which is a callback, right? It's maybe an action, a Redux action. So let's write it like here. Add to do, and then you see the story source changed. It's what we passed inside StoryBook. So I don't know why I don't have action logger, which is weird. This stuff always happens during presentations. Sorry for technical difficulties. Maybe something wrong with something.
Maybe you need to stop and start after they're adding an add-on.
Yeah, it can be. It can be, thanks. But still, it's action logger, it's like built-in. It's supposed to be there. But
Perhaps you have an error. Perhaps you have an error.
no, I don't have errors.
Right on.
No fun, so let's try to remove add-on. Now it doesn't recognize.
Because it didn't load end within.
No, add within for now, yeah, because I disabled add-on, so I don't have add within, so I had add. So if I do this, I have to do this. Okay, I don't know why I don't have action.
Don't you need to import it?
No, it's on it's not on global. It's if you're inside stories of, it's like you have chaining here. It's stories of, header module, and then you have add within here. And then you can just add within for something else. Let's just stop it, rerun.
Did you import the function?
I don't need to import. Okay, probably we will see it later. Just a small test.
Oh, I see.
I know. Yeah. It's good one. It's good that we had this error now, so I can show you something neat here. Inside StoryBook config, you have addons.js. Inside addon.js, you register your addons. If you have addon.js like empty, it assumes that you don't have any add-ons, so add-ons are basically panels that are added. So if you have nothing, then it also doesn't load. Default action panel, which could probably need to open an issue. Let's just configure all our add-ons that we will take a look in a bit. You just configure the ability to add add-ons. And then we added nodes, and no, we don't need that. And basically that's it. And also, to recap, we have info element, right? So we will get back to our header, and we have action loggers. So if we have action that is fired, and then we see the payload. Okay. So now let's add footer. Which I will just copy because hopefully you got the idea. No. I added regular footer with no items and show fit. Like you have, see the code, right? It's not, it's okay, right? So we have the same, add with info, and we have text, and then the function, and you have your component with completed count, active count, filter, unclear completed, which is an action, and on show we have action on show. So if click completed on show, see show completed, show active, this is on show action, and we don't really have clear complete. Yeah, we don't have it. So this is how you create. We create a story for footer. Let's add several other stories and just walk through the code. And I will remove the last one because okay, so we have no items. Show filter. We have no completed 10 active, and show filter. We have 5 completed. You see, I have clear completed here. 10 active and show all. The name. I have 5 completed. I have 10 active. So as you can see, when you have any number of completed, you will see clear completed here. And if you have active, you will see active here. And have different filters, completed filters, active filters, and all filters, right? But what if we want our props to be dynamic? We want the ability inside our storybook to determine whether it's 10 items or 5 items or how much items is it. So for that purpose, we have decorators. On stories of object, you have add decorator function, to which you pass decorators outside of your add-on. For instance, here in Storybook add-on knobs, you have with knobs decorator, which is passed to decorator function. In the same manner, it can be just function that wraps base component and just returns component, whatever. It's a simple decorator. It's like making high order components. It's the same technique. So for example, if you want all your components to be centered on the screen, you just create a decorator, add it with add decorator, and then you're good to go. So here we added with knobs, which is an add-on for dynamic, for specifying dynamic props. And let's see, let's take a look at this code. We have dynamic prop section here, and we have knobs here. So we have no items left, and we have 10 completed. You see this changed in a second when you have any number of completed items, or if we have 10 counts, it's 2, it's 10, and we can just specify completed. In order to do that, we need to import text, boolean, and number from StoryBook add-on nodes, and inside our component, when we pass prop, we pass function text or number or boolean. Don't have boolean, right? Don't have. So you pass a function. The first one is a title you will see here, and the second one is a value. For example, completed count is 0, so the default is 0. Here the default is 0, and here the default is show all. So that's basically how you add nodes. And again, the cool feature of the documentation looks like this. Okay, so this stands for, so we created footer. Now we have header, we have footer, we want main section. Main section, let's take a look at how a component is implemented, and let's create this one. Main section is has prop types of, it has to-dos and has actions. To-dos, I assume that it's an array, right? No, I don't assume it is an array, and action is an object. Okay. Then to-dos are passed from props to main section, and after a bit of research, no, it's not inside actions. Inside the reducer, I can see that to-do format looks like this. It has text, has completed, and ID, right? So basically how I write stories. Let's create stories of main section, and then I have module, and let's add info, one to, and we have main section, and we have no. Have to-dos, which is empty, and we have actions, which is an object. Yeah. So our main section and no to-dos. Okay. So let's add another one. We want one to do. One to do. Our to do's was it's here. It was like this, right? Initial state. Let's add one. One to do. And then if we go to one to do, we have user events. Okay, so let's do something neat. Let's import. We want all our Redux actions to be loaded, right? Inside action login. And currently we don't know what Redux actions we have. So let's do like this. Let's import. Start actions from actions, and load actions. Object is on actions, and then reduce, and then accumulate. pointer, and then we have let's say action name. Then we just know them action and action name. Action from StoryBook and then action. So basically what I do here, I take all keys from actions, which are basically all our Redux actions, and then I run reduce on them. And then I basically create a dictionary with action name, Redux action name, which corresponds to action from StoryBook with action name. Too much action names, right? So now, when we passed logged actions to our actions inside main section, we can go to notice, one to this, and then let's say edit, and it's not working because something's broken. That's why I have snippets.
So with the reduce, because you wrap the reduce with another.
No. So logged actions. Yes. It's the same. Yeah, it's here. That's what you meant, right?
No.
No, reduce is fine. You have accumulator, and then you have the action name, and then you just merge them. So let's rerun, go inside want to do's, edit, and then voila, it has edit to do's. And then let's say we have complete to do, or we have delete to do. And that's without even looking at Redux sections and what is there. So now let's link between stories. Let's add two to-dos. And this one will be use Redux 1, and then use Redux use Redux 1 and use it's just fast. Redux 1 and Redux 2. And now let's do it like this. We want when you have and now if you have two to-dos and ID. Have two to-dos, and let's say the first one is completed, and we want the second one. We want, if you clear the one of these to-dos, then we will link to one to-do. Okay? So let's do it like this. We have logged action, and we have I think it's completed. Complete to do, and then let's link to, and it's called main. I said it's two parameters, right? So it's main section, and then it's one to do. It's deleted. Sorry. See? It's just linked here. Okay, so I have little time left, so I will just comment out all other stuff. do item here with new to do or completed. Here you can see that their implementation was not optimal because this item cannot live without the wrapping to do, which is not good. It's supposed to be separate. And we have to do text input with text not editing, with text editing, with text no placeholder, without text with placeholder. So now we have all our components for the whole storybook. So now let's test it. I haven't wrote any test. I haven't tried any test. Good. Yeah, and you see it failed on one of the tests. You see, we haven't wrote any test, but Storybook used StoryShots add-on and generated tests for you based on your storybook, based on your components. It means it takes every state of component, creates a snapshot. You can see it here. It was a separate package called StoryShots, and then it got merged inside Storybook. So it generated several snapshots for all of our stories, and it's failing because my main section, I think, doesn't have everything. Yeah, you can see here what's the difference. You see that in the main section, the implementation before that was a little bit different. The naming was different. It was one to do, and now it use Redux, and it's different now.
What's the baseline of this snapshot? What does it compare against?
Against the last snapshot you ran.
Okay.
You mean if
what makes the first test fail?
Hmm?
When you run a test for the first time, what makes it fail? Is it just
It's a visual
because
visual
React
state.
throws missing prop, or
I didn't quite get what.
you said that it automatically generated the tests. What are the conditions? What makes a test fail? Is it just that you didn't define it well and you didn't pass all?
It's comparison of all props, styles, everything. Basically, it's not instead of unit tests. It's more for visual testing. Like you have component inside, you have a story of your component. It visually looks appealing or visually looks good, and then you run story shots. It generates snapshot for all new components, and then of course there's no condition like in unit testing, like spec. If this is true, then pass test. If false, don't pass test. It's more a visual thing. But when you write tests in Jest, you always write this kind of test. You write to match snapshot when you're writing Jest. Here you don't need to write. Speaking of unit tests, you have an additional add-on. It's called what's here? It's called StoryBook add-on specification, and basically what it does, it gives you another panel here. I don't have any tests there though. And you have specification panel here. Basically what it gives you an ability to use spec, describe, and it from this add-on to write tests inside your story. Meaning you can put all your story code and your test code inside one file, And if you're not okay with putting all your stories inside stores directory, it's also can be tweaked. It can be tweaked in config.js, and you can basically specify that that you have extension.spec.js, and it stands for both stories and specs. There are lots of configurations you can do with StoryBook, but I hope this gives you the feeling why it's good. And it's really amazing when you incorporate this in your development workflow and have a team of several people working with StoryBook. StoryBook can be built and can be shared on as a static website, so you can incorporate this inside the workflow. Like when somebody releases a feature, he releases it inside StoryBook, and then it goes to visual design, visual review, and then it goes into production, but it stays inside StoryBook, which is deployed to S3 or whatever you use for static websites. So in my opinion, it's a really amazing tool. I use it on a daily basis, and I advise you should use it. And that's basically it. Yep. And you can run it with build StoryBook. You can build it, and you will have static site. And test StoryBook I just show you. So, yeah, questions.
What is the main or multiple use cases for designers?
The question was what are multiple use cases for the designer, right? Well, in this use case you have like 4 or 5 components and that's it, but in a real world application you have lots of them. And designers need to know, in my opinion, what components they can reuse in their design in order to create things faster, to design faster, and both designers and developers are happy.
It's for showcasing. It's a showcase.
And not only showcasing, it's also for visual QA, because you do it outside of application, like you're showing this component is okay, yeah, this is okay, it passes, then you deploy it, you put it inside your app, and it goes to production. And if it works in StoryBook, it will work in your application. And you can also put the whole screen here inside StoryBook. Is
there a way for them to combine multiple components into one?
Yeah, it just is an isolated environment. You can just throw there whatever you want.
No, but for them, not for the engineers. Like
for the designers?
Yeah.
There is a package which is called React to Sketch.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
Sketch.
React to Sketch.
SketchUp.
Yeah, it takes your React component and it renders it inside SketchUp for designers. Yeah. And that's basically closes the workflow. Like you develop in StoryBook, you have the component, you show StoryBook to showcase your work and showcase your component. And then if designer want to make tweaks on your component you've created, you just render it inside Sketch, assuming your designer works with Sketch. And then designer just changes little things, and I hope it answered the question. Yeah.
Then we're going to have other arguments. What not to do.
Hmm?
Other arguments, not what not to do.
We have a lot of arguments what not to do.
What does that mean?
Well, huh? Yeah, basically, if I understand correctly, this opens the whole opportunity to argue on things, right? Which is good, I think. Because brainstorming, it's basically brainstorming. Brainstorming is good. And I prefer to argue on things inside StoryBook, which is separated, instead of getting bugs. So, works for me, I hope it will work for you.
Okay.
Thank you.